The village lay nestled between rolling hills and winding rivers, a place where the color of one's clothes spoke louder than any words, and the shimmer of fabric often meant the difference between admiration and scorn. In this village, people measured each other not only by their labor or words but by the finery that adorned their bodies. A girl in tattered rags drew eyes of pity, while one in vibrant fabrics earned whispers of awe. Among these villagers, there was a young girl whose heart and hands were gentle, whose smile carried the warmth of sunlight through the narrow dirt lanes. Yet, what made her remarkable was not the strength of her arms or the swiftness of her mind, but a single treasured dress, the only memento left from her late mother, stitched with love and woven with care. The dress was unlike any other. Its color was the soft glow of dawn, a gentle hue that seemed to carry whispers of her mother's laughter. She had kept it hidden in a corner of her small room, wrapped carefully in clean cloth, treating it as both armor and comfort. When she wore it, she felt a connection not only to her mother's memory but to a sense of belonging, of identity, that no cruel word or glance could erase. The folds of the dress shimmered with quiet grace, catching the light in a way that made her feel both safe and seen. Each morning, before beginning her chores, she would touch it reverently, smoothing its fabric with care and remembering her mother's gentle voice, telling her to walk through the world with kindness, no matter what it demanded in return. But not everyone in the household shared such admiration for the girl. Her stepsister, whose own beauty was pale and lifeless beside the glow of the dress, looked on with simmering envy. Every glance at the dress, every word of praise the girl received from neighbors or passers-by, felt like a knife to her heart. The stepsister's hands itched to destroy what she could not possess, to snuff out the light that seemed to follow the girl everywhere she went. The stepmother, quick to fuel resentment, whispered cruel reminders of hierarchy and obligation, ensuring that jealousy festered into a quiet, burning rage. The girl, in her innocence, could sense the tension but remained too gentle to fight it, unaware that the envy she had never asked for would soon take a form she could not have imagined. The villagers, accustomed to tales of jealousy and punishment, often whispered about the family's affairs, noting how even a single stitch of finery could provoke discord in hearts unsteady with pride. It was under this scrutiny, in a house filled with both admiration and bitterness, that the stage was set for what would become a turning point in the girl's life. A fire, small at first, would flicker in shadow, a force that threatened to consume her most cherished possession, yet would carry within it the seed of transformation. The air seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, the wind whispering through the trees as though warning the girl of what was to come. Little did she know that the flames would not destroy her memory, her joy, or her connection to her mother. Instead, fire would become an unlikely messenger, turning grief into something radiant, sorrow into something enduring. What was meant to harm her would awaken a power that no cloth alone could carry, a miracle born from ashes, a gift that would not only restore what was lost but elevate it to something beyond imagination. The first sparks of this change, though unseen and quiet, had already begun to dance, ready to light the path for the girl in ways the stepsister could never foresee. The girl woke each morning before the sun had fully stretched its golden fingers across the village, rising quietly from her small mat in the corner of the room she shared with the shadows of her stepfamily. Despite the weight of her daily chores and the constant presence of envy around her, she carried herself with a gentle grace that softened even the harshest edges of her day. Her hands, though calloused from sweeping, carrying water, and tending the small garden patches, moved with careful deliberation, never hastily, never cruelly. Each action she performed, from scrubbing the earthen floors to grinding the maize for breakfast, was infused with a quiet patience and a mindful attention that spoke not of her hardship, but of her innate goodness. She sang softly as she worked, her voice a gentle hum that mingled with the morning songs of birds in the trees outside the windows. The sound was not loud enough to carry far, yet it seemed to touch everyone who happened to hear it. Villagers often remarked that the girl's laughter, soft and unassuming, could lift a spirit heavier than sorrow itself. Even when her stepmother scolded or her stepsister glared with bitter envy, she maintained a demeanor of kindness, never returning harsh words with cruelty, never letting anger shadow her smile. Her joy, simple and unpretentious, came from small pleasures: the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the smell of fresh bread baking at the neighbor's hearth, the playful chatter of children chasing chickens in the village square. The dress, her most treasured possession, was never far from her thoughts. Each morning she would carefully smooth its folds, imagining her mother's hands running along the seams, remembering the gentle lessons whispered while it was being made. She would hold the fabric to her cheek, inhaling the faint scent of the past, and feel a connection to a mother she could no longer see. The dress was more than cloth, It was memory woven into silk, a tangible embodiment of love and protection that strengthened her in ways nothing else could. When she wore it, even for the briefest moments within the privacy of her room, she felt shielded from the envy that surrounded her, reminded that her worth was not measured by cruelty or neglect but by the light she carried within. Villagers could not help but notice her gentle spirit, even amidst the toil and hardship she endured daily. Mothers who struggled with their own children would point her out as an example of patience and kindness. Shopkeepers, busy with their own trade, would smile at her as she passed, offering small gestures of recognition: a fresh loaf of bread, a ripe fruit, a kind word. The elders often spoke of her as a rare jewel, a girl whose heart remained untarnished despite the difficulties life had placed before her. Children followed her like shadows, drawn to her warmth, listening intently to the soft hums of her songs and the tender way she tended to the animals she fed each day. Even in the face of her stepfamily's cruelty, she found ways to embrace joy. She would tend the garden with care, planting seeds and nurturing them until they sprouted, rejoicing in the growth that mirrored her own quiet resilience. She shared her small finds with neighbors in need, a handful of beans here, a few pieces of bread there, without expectation or hesitation. Her hands, though often tired and roughened by labor, were generous in both giving and care. The villagers, many of whom lived in fear of the stepmother's wrath, were drawn to her humility, noting the stark contrast between her gentle heart and the cruelty that seemed so easily wielded by others. The girl's laughter, which often bubbled up in moments of private delight, became a source of fascination and admiration among the villagers. Even on the days when chores seemed endless and hunger nipped at her belly, she could find moments to smile or hum a melody that lifted the air around her. Children would try to imitate her songs, their tiny voices mingling with hers in the narrow lanes, while adults shook their heads in quiet wonder at the resilience and kindness that seemed to radiate naturally from her very being. The dress remained central to her sense of identity and strength. It was a reminder that love once given never truly fades, and that even amidst hardship, beauty and care could endure. When the girl tied the sash around her waist or adjusted the delicate folds over her shoulders, she felt a reassurance that no stepmother's cruelty could take from her entirely, the memory of her mother's love and the quiet power it imbued. She carried herself with dignity, even when her body ached, and this dignity became a quiet beacon to all who encountered her, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit when nourished by love and kindness. Through her daily routines, laughter, and unwavering gentleness, she taught the village an unspoken lesson: that true beauty and strength are measured not by wealth or status but by the capacity to endure, to care, and to remain gentle even when the world around you is cruel. Each small act of kindness, each quiet smile, became a thread in a larger tapestry, one that would soon weave itself into a story the entire village could not ignore. The girl's gentle heart and quiet joys, which had once inspired admiration and warmth, began to stir a storm of envy within the walls of her own home. Her stepsister, who had long felt the sting of comparison, watched with increasing bitterness as villagers praised the girl for her kindness, her diligence, and the unassuming beauty that seemed to emanate from her very being. Each compliment the girl received, each gesture of respect or admiration, felt to the stepsister like a personal wound, a reminder of her own shortcomings magnified in the light of another's grace. It was not merely jealousy, but a deep, gnawing resentment that took root in her heart, twisting every thought into sharp and bitter edges. The stepmother, keenly aware of the brewing storm, nurtured it with careful words and subtle reminders. When the girl returned from fetching water or tending the animals, the stepmother would whisper to her daughter, her voice low and filled with false concern, "See how she draws all the eyes. Such pride is dangerous. A girl must know her place, and this one must be reminded that she is beneath us. Let her not think herself better than our family, or she will grow bold." These whispered instructions, though veiled as counsel, fanned the flames of jealousy, giving the stepsister both a purpose and a target. Every smile the girl shared, every nod of respect from a neighbor, was reframed in her mind as insult, a personal affront she could not tolerate. The object of her envy, the dress, became the focal point of her hatred. To the stepsister, the garment was more than fabric. It was a symbol of the girl's light, her connection to love and memory that the stepsister could never claim. The shimmer of its dawn-colored silk seemed to mock her, reminding her of a joy she would never feel, a care she would never receive. The way the girl handled it, with reverence, with gentleness, with quiet pride, drove the stepsister to fury. Every day she watched the girl fold the dress, touch it to her cheek, and carry herself as though wrapped in a mantle of protection. That the garment had been sewn by the hands of the girl's late mother, infused with love and memory, only intensified the stepsister's rage, for she saw in it a power she could not possess. The household grew tense with unspoken hostility. The girl, though perceptive enough to sense the bitterness directed toward her, remained untouched in spirit, continuing her chores with calm diligence, humming softly to herself, her presence a quiet counterpoint to the simmering malice in the room. But the stepsister's eyes followed her at every moment, tracking her movements with a sharp, calculating gaze. Every time the dress caught the sunlight, shimmering softly against the girl's skin, her envy boiled into a silent, seething storm. She began to imagine ways to diminish the girl, to tarnish the dress, to erase the source of her own humiliation. The stepmother, seeing the potential for cruelty to serve her own purposes, subtly encouraged these dark thoughts. She reminded her daughter that the girl's beauty and virtue were threats to the household's hierarchy, that such a girl could not be allowed to grow unchallenged. She spoke of pride, of humility, and of punishment for those who dared shine too brightly in the presence of others. The stepsister, absorbing every word, allowed her resentment to crystallize into action, her mind no longer satisfied with envy alone. Thus, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. The stepsister's jealousy, now fueled by her mother's whispers and the girl's very light, focused entirely on the dress. In her mind, if she could destroy it, she could shatter the girl's spirit, snuff out the glow that drew admiration from all around. The innocent garment, woven with love and memory, became the embodiment of the stepsister's rage, a target for malice that would soon set the wheels of fate in motion. The night was quiet, a hush settling over the household as the girl had retired to her small corner of the room, humming softly to herself as she tidied her few belongings. Outside, the moon cast silver streaks across the walls, illuminating the household in a calm, deceptive glow. In that stillness, the stepsister moved with silent purpose, her hands trembling not from fear but from the sharp thrill of revenge long plotted in secret. She had waited for the moment when no one would see, when the girl's attention was elsewhere, and when the flames could do their cruel work unnoticed. With careful precision, she pulled the treasured dress from its hiding place. Its soft glow in the moonlight seemed almost to mock her, and her fingers itched to crush the delicate fabric, to snuff out the memory stitched into its folds. Instead, she fetched a small torch, a flickering flame that reflected the fire burning in her heart. For a moment she hesitated, sensing something beyond her anger, a quiet warning in the shadows, but pride and envy outweighed reason. The torch met the silk, and instantly flames licked at the edges of the dress, curling and twisting with heat. The girl turned at the sudden crackle, her heart leaping into her throat as her eyes fell upon the blaze. "No," she whispered, but her voice was swallowed by the roar of fire. She tried to reach for it, to pull the dress away from the hungry flames, but the stepsister held firm, and her pleas went unheard. The silk curled, blackened, and fell in fiery pieces to the floor, releasing the scent of smoke and singed memory. The girl could only watch, helpless, as the dress that had carried her mother's love and her own small joys disappeared before her eyes, turning into nothing but glowing embers. Tears fell freely, carving clean lines down her soot-streaked face. Each drop seemed to carry both grief and the weight of helplessness, and as they hit the floor, they sizzled in the heat of the fire for a brief instant before cooling, leaving faint traces in the dust. The ashes scattered across the earthen floor, drifting upward on the soft currents of the night air, catching briefly in the moonlight like pale sparks, and then settling silently around the room. The girl sank to her knees, her hands reaching out toward the remnants, but only smoke and ash answered her yearning. Outside, the night seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind paused, as if waiting for the inevitable end of what had begun. In that quiet, the girl felt both the sting of loss and a strange, growing awareness. Something larger, beyond her grief, was stirring in the shadows. The flames had consumed the dress, yes, but they had also awakened a presence that whispered through the room, subtle but undeniable. A power born from suffering, from cruelty, and from the depth of her own connection to what had been taken, was beginning to gather, waiting to transform the ashes into something unimaginable. By the time the last flicker of fire died, the girl sat amidst the scattered ashes, tears glinting like tiny crystals in the moonlight. Though grief weighed heavily on her heart, a quiet pulse of hope began to stir, a whisper that all was not lost, that from the destruction, something new and radiant might emerge. The girl lay on the cold, hard floor beside the scattered ashes, her small frame curled around what remained of the dress, as though her presence alone could gather the fragments back into something whole. The night stretched on endlessly, silent except for the occasional rustle of wind against the walls and the distant cries of an owl. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, Each inhale heavy with grief, each exhale a whisper of sorrow she could not release. The world felt unbearably cruel in that moment, the stepsister's malice having left her stripped not only of her cherished dress but of the comfort it had provided, the tangible memory of her mother's love. She pressed her face into the ashes, letting the fine gray powder dust her cheeks and fingers, and wept quietly, imagining the life that could have been. Her dreams when they came were not gentle. Shadows of fire flickered across the walls of her mind, consuming landscapes of light and turning her cherished memories into dark smoke. Yet, just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a shift occurred, a subtle vibration in the air, a warmth rising from the ashes beneath her hands, a whisper that was not of this world. It grew louder, more insistent, and soon she felt herself being drawn into a place that was neither waking nor sleeping, a realm where the veil between the living and the spirits thinned. In that place, figures emerged, luminous and serene, their forms shifting like smoke in silver light. They were the ancestors, the spirits who had watched over the village for countless generations, whose eyes had seen injustice, cruelty, and goodness alike. They regarded her not with judgment but with recognition. "Child," one of the spirits spoke, its voice like the rustle of wind through leaves, "we have seen the suffering inflicted upon you. The fire has taken what was cherished, but fear not, for nothing pure is ever truly lost." Another spirit, a woman whose hair shimmered like woven moonlight, knelt beside her dream form and placed a gentle hand over her heart. "The love sewn into that dress, the memories stitched with care, cannot be destroyed by malice or flame. They live on within you, and through you they will take shape again." The girl listened, mesmerized, her tears still falling, though now mingled with a growing sense of wonder. The ancestral presence was warm and enveloping, a shield against the cruelty she had endured. "You have been tested," the spirits continued, their voices harmonizing in a gentle chorus. "Through loss you will find strength. Through grief you will find resilience. The ashes at your side are not an end but a beginning. From them something greater will rise, something imbued with both love and memory, a gift for you and for all who witness its power." The girl's heart, heavy moments before, now swelled with a cautious hope. She felt a pulse in the ashes beneath her, a vibration that seemed to answer the spirit's words, as if the very remnants of the dress were alive with promise. The dream lingered, vivid and lingering, until dawn's first light crept into her small room. The girl awoke, the cool morning air brushing against her tear-streaked face. The ashes lay still beside her, but she no longer felt only loss. She sensed the presence of the spirits, their promise echoing in her bones. Something miraculous was about to occur, something that would transform grief into beauty, sorrow into strength. And though she could not yet see what would come, she knew with a certainty that quieted all doubt, that the fire had not destroyed her, it had prepared her for a gift beyond imagination. As the first light of dawn stretched across the village, a gentle warmth brushed the girl's cheeks. She stirred from her restless sleep, still curled beside the scattered ashes of her cherished dress. The remnants, gray and lifeless in the dim morning light, seemed ordinary at first glance. Yet, as she blinked and lifted her gaze, a subtle movement caught her attention. Tiny motes of ash rose from the floor, swirling in the soft morning breeze, catching the sunlight and glinting like faint sparks of gold. They danced and spiraled around her as if drawn to her very presence, moving with a rhythm that seemed alive. She reached out with trembling hands, afraid the motion would shatter the fragile spectacle. But the motes of ash did not scatter. Instead they gathered, forming delicate threads that shimmered like silver in the sun. The threads twisted and wove themselves together, following an invisible pattern guided by unseen hands. The girl's breath caught in her throat as the transformation continued. What had been ashes, symbols of loss and despair, was becoming something magnificent. Slowly, almost reverently, the threads wrapped around her, weaving a new garment in place of the one she had lost. The process was mesmerizing. Each thread gleamed with a subtle brilliance, shifting in color from dawn's soft rose to the quiet shimmer of moonlight. The texture was smooth and warm against her skin, yet impossibly light, as if the dress carried not just fabric but a memory, a blessing, a fragment of something greater than herself. The girl's fingers traced the shimmering surface in awe, marveling at the intricacy and beauty of what had risen from destruction. She could feel the presence of her mother, the ancestral spirits, the very essence of love and care sewn into the delicate weave. As the final thread settled into place, the dress seemed to pulse with life, embracing her gently as if acknowledging her resilience and sorrow. She rose slowly to her feet, moving with a grace she had not known before. The sunlight, now spilling fully across the village, caught the folds of the silk, casting prismatic hues onto the walls and floor. She twirled, almost cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, watching as the light played across her new dress. The colors shifted and shimmered with every movement, a living garment that radiated beauty, strength, and hope. Neighbors peeking through windows gasped at the sight, believing their eyes had been deceived by the early morning light. The girl's small frame, once hidden beneath chores and hardship, now carried an aura of grace and enchantment. From the ashes of loss had risen a creation beyond imagination, a miracle woven from love, memory, and the quiet power of her enduring heart. She stood there, bathed in sunlight, feeling a profound connection to those who had come before, to the spirits who had guided her, and to the inner strength that had never left her. For the first time since the loss, she smiled without hesitation, her joy radiant and uncontainable. The ashes, once symbols of grief, now lay scattered at her feet, transformed into proof that destruction was not the end but a beginning, that love and resilience could weave beauty from even the darkest night. As the girl stepped outside, the soft morning breeze carried the faint shimmer of her new dress across the village square. The sunlight caught the threads in such a way that they seemed to ripple with life, sending flashes of silver, gold, and the soft rose of dawn across the cobblestones. Villagers paused mid-task, their eyes drawn to her with a mixture of astonishment and reverence. Mothers hushed their children, who had been playing and laughing in the dirt lanes, and even the elders, usually stern and composed, leaned forward with expressions of awe and disbelief. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd like a gentle current at first, then swelling into a low chorus of amazement. "Is it magic?" some asked, their voices trembling with wonder. "The spirits must have blessed her," others murmured, fingers pointing discreetly, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and admiration. The young girl moved slowly, almost cautiously, aware of every gaze upon her. Each step seemed to send the light of her dress dancing across the walls of the village, and with each movement, the villagers could not help but be captivated. What had risen from the ashes was no ordinary garment. It carried a weight of the extraordinary, a miracle born from sorrow and nurtured by unseen forces. The children, unable to contain their curiosity and delight, ran forward, laughing and pointing, eager to see the shimmering silk up close. They reached out hesitantly, fingers brushing the edges of the fabric, and gasped when it seemed to respond to their touch, soft and warm, yet strong enough not to tear or fray. Even the village animals paused in their morning routines, ears pricked, noses lifted, as though they too recognized the unusual energy radiating from the girl. The village square, once a place of ordinary life, now seemed charged with an almost sacred electricity, a sense that something remarkable had passed among them. But amid the marvel and whispered praise, there was another presence, a shadow of envy that had long festered in the household. The stepsister, who had secretly hoped to see the girl humiliated and diminished, now felt her heart twist with humiliation and rage. She stood behind the villagers, hands clenched, lips pressed thin, her eyes flashing with a heat that made her cheeks pale. Every glance at the glowing dress, every whisper of awe directed toward the girl, only deepened the burn of envy in her chest. The plan she had nurtured for so long, to shame, to wound, to erase the light the girl carried, had failed spectacularly. The stepmother, who had fueled her daughter's jealousy with careful words and whispered warnings, now realized that her machinations had gone beyond control. The household's carefully maintained hierarchy was undone by forces she could neither command nor understand. She watched in silence as the girl, once meek and overlooked, moved among the villagers with a quiet grace that commanded attention and respect. The aura of blessing that surrounded her seemed tangible, an invisible mantle of dignity and power that no stepmother's scolding or stepsister's envy could pierce. As the villagers gathered around, some bowing their heads in reverence, others murmuring prayers of thanks for having witnessed such a miracle, the stepsister's humiliation deepened. Her anger, once simmering quietly, now roared, but there was nothing she could do to reclaim the moment, to reverse the awe and admiration that enveloped the girl. The very dress that had been meant to inspire envy and destruction now symbolized her failure, her inability to harm what the spirits had chosen to protect. By midday, the whispers of a miracle had spread to the edges of the village and beyond. Travelers passing through paused to see the girl who had risen from ashes, marveling at her beauty and the enchanted silk that seemed almost alive. The stepsister's fury simmered silently, a stark contrast to the overwhelming admiration that the girl now inspired, marking the first of many moments in which envy would falter before the quiet strength of virtue and the unseen forces that had guided her through loss. The stepsister, consumed by envy and desperate to reclaim the admiration she believed was rightfully hers, retreated to her small, dimly lit room. She rifled through her own collection of finery, a haphazard assortment of faded silks and threadbare fabrics, each piece once considered elegant in its own time. With a determined glare, she attempted to assemble an outfit that might rival the brilliance of the girl's newly risen dress. She smoothed folds, pinned edges, and adjusted sashes, trying to mimic the grace she had witnessed in the girl's every movement, yet every adjustment only reminded her of the vast gulf between what she wore and the radiance before her. When she finally emerged from her room, she sought the village square, convinced that a display of her own finery might draw attention back to her, or at least diminish the awe surrounding the girl. But the villagers, who had gathered in anticipation after witnessing the miracle of the dress, barely spared her a glance. Eyes that had once admired or pitied her now followed the girl exclusively, drawn to the shimmering silk that moved with an almost magical life. Children pointed excitedly at the girl, whispering to one another about the glow of her dress, while elders murmured blessings under their breath, acknowledging the spirit-led beauty that no mere fabric of mortal hands could match. The stepsister's heart sank with every passing moment. Her carefully chosen outfit, which had once seemed the height of elegance, now appeared dull, flat, and lifeless in comparison. Her cheeks burned with shame as the villagers, previously indifferent to her presence, now either ignored her entirely or regarded her with thinly veiled amusement. She tried to lift her chin and walk with dignity, attempting a smile that felt hollow, but the villagers' gaze never lingered on her. Every glance returned immediately to the girl, whose calm composure and radiant dress captivated everyone, leaving the stepsister isolated in her failure. Her envy, already sharp, deepened into desperation. She could feel it clawing at her chest, an unrelenting fire that refused to be quenched. Each time the girl moved, each ripple of the shimmering silk reminded her of what she could not have, of the beauty and grace that had risen from ashes and sorrow. The stepsister's mind raced with thoughts of revenge, of ways to destroy what she could not emulate, yet even as ideas formed, a subtle fear began to creep in. Something beyond her understanding protected the girl, something that had turned loss into triumph and misfortune into wonder. By midday, the stepsister's humiliation was complete. She lingered at the edges of the village square, awkward and self-conscious, while whispers of the girl's miraculous dress swirled around her. Children tugged at their mothers, pointing and laughing softly. Elders nodded in respect toward the girl, offering smiles that carried recognition of virtue and blessing. The stepsister's attempts to reclaim admiration had failed utterly. The envy that had once fueled her pride now consumed her from within, leaving only a gnawing, desperate longing to regain what could never be taken from the girl. The villagers, fully captivated by the miracle, continued to watch, speak in hushed tones and marvel, leaving the stepsister to grapple with the stark reality. Her cruelty had been powerless, her beauty and finery insignificant against the forces that had chosen to protect the girl. The humiliation etched itself into her expression and posture, a silent testimony to the failure of envy when confronted by grace and the unseen blessings of the spirits. As the sun climbed higher over the village, a sense of awe lingered in the air, mingling with whispers and cautious glances. The miraculous dress and the girl who wore it had captured the attention of every villager, but with admiration came curiosity, and with curiosity came questions. The elders, wise and careful, recognized that this was no ordinary event. The shimmering silk, born from ashes, radiated a presence beyond mortal hands, a message that needed understanding. They gathered in hushed council, consulting the village diviners, whose eyes were said to see beyond the veil of the everyday and into the will of the spirits. The diviners, cloaked in the soft hues of ceremonial robes, examined the girl and the dress with reverence. Their eyes, sharp and discerning, caught the subtle pulse in the fabric, the way it seemed to respond to the girl's movements and even her thoughts. With measured gestures, they traced patterns in the air above the dress, murmuring words of invocation that echoed softly in the elders' ears. Finally they spoke, their voices carrying both authority and awe. "This dress," one diviner said, his tone deliberate, "is a gift of justice. It is born not merely of cloth, but of the balance restored to a heart wronged by cruelty." Another elder, nodding gravely, added, "The spirits have witnessed the suffering of the girl, the envy and malice of her stepsister, the silence of those who might have intervened. Yet from that suffering they have answered with beauty. The ashes, though a symbol of loss, were transformed by the unseen hands of justice into a manifestation of protection and grace." The villagers listened, some with widened eyes, others with bowed heads, understanding for the first time that the miracle was not random but deliberate. It was a response to cruelty, a declaration that innocence and virtue, when wronged, would not go unnoticed by the ancestors. The diviners continued, their voices low but firm, issuing a warning that resonated throughout the village. Let no hand dare harm the innocent. Let no word be spoken in mockery or scorn. The spirits watch and they are swift in their judgment. Those who bring suffering upon the pure will find that the consequences are not merely human but ancestral. Balance will be restored as it has been in this case, and the consequences may fall upon those who act unjustly, leaving them bereft of wealth, comfort, and honor. A hush settled over the gathering. The villagers exchanged glances, some nodding in recognition of past misdeeds, others clutching their children with renewed vigilance. The warning was clear: cruelty and mockery were not to be taken lightly. The girl's stepsister, standing in the shadows of the square, felt a shiver run down her spine. The power of the ancestors, channeled through the miracle of the dress, was undeniable, and the humiliation she had felt in the presence of the villagers now carried with it an additional weight, the knowledge that her envy and malice had been observed and judged by forces far greater than herself. The elders concluded the council by stressing that the village must protect and honor the innocent, for the spirit's gaze was ever watchful. This girl, once vulnerable and overlooked, had become a symbol of justice, resilience, and the unseen power of the ancestors. Her story and the miraculous transformation of her dress would serve as a lesson for generations, that cruelty, no matter how subtle or hidden, does not go unnoticed, and that the ancestors, ever vigilant, respond to injustice with a hand both stern and merciful. As the villagers dispersed, whispers continued, not of jealousy or envy, but of reverence and reflection. The miraculous dress had shifted the balance of perception in the village, reminding all who witnessed it that innocence must be protected, that beauty born from loss carries the weight of justice, and that the spirits themselves are never far from those who act with malice. The stepsister, driven by a burning mixture of envy and desperation, decided that the only way to reclaim her pride was to destroy the miraculous dress that had humiliated her. She waited until the household was quiet, the villagers gone, and the girl occupied in her chores. With trembling hands she approached the garment, eyes narrowed and lips pressed tight with determination. The silk, gleaming softly in the dim light, seemed almost to sense her intentions, shimmering with a subtle pulse that made her hesitate for a fleeting moment. But pride and envy overcame caution and she struck. Her first attempt was with fire, recalling how the dress had once been consumed by flames in the stepsister's cruel hands before. She lit a small torch, intending to watch it vanish as smoke rose into the air. But as the flames licked the edges of the silk, the dress remained unharmed. The fire curled around the fabric and then receded, as if respecting the invisible shield surrounding it. The stepsister's anger flared. She had anticipated destruction, yet the garment seemed protected by forces far beyond her understanding. Undeterred, she grabbed a bucket of water, thinking to soak the silk, to drench it until it lost its luster. But the water fell upon it and simply rolled off, leaving the threads gleaming and untouched, as though the liquid had been repelled by some invisible power. Every droplet seemed to glimmer like silver in the sunlight streaming through the window, mocking her frustration. She tried again, pouring more water, shaking the fabric, but the dress remained perfect, its radiance undiminished. The stepsister's fury turned sharper, and in a final desperate act she seized a knife, aiming to cut the fabric and tear away the source of her humiliation. She slashed at the silk with all her strength, only to find the blade met resistance, stopping short as if the threads had hardened into something stronger than steel. Each strike bounced harmlessly off the fabric, leaving the dress flawless and glowing, untouched by her spiteful efforts. Her repeated failures did not go unnoticed. Villagers, returning from their tasks, had begun to gather near the house, whispering and laughing softly at the visible frustration painted across her face. Children pointed, giggling as the stepsister's rage became ever more apparent. She stomped, threw her arms in exasperation, and shouted, yet nothing she did could mar the dress's beauty. The girl meanwhile remained calm and serene, the miraculous silk moving softly with her, unscathed and radiant. Her composure and grace only deepened the stepsister's humiliation, highlighting the stark contrast between envy-driven malice and the quiet power of virtue protected by unseen forces. By the time the sun was high, the stepsister had exhausted herself entirely. Her cheeks were flushed with anger, her hands raw from her efforts, and her pride shattered completely. The villagers, who had once regarded her with a mix of indifference and mild respect, now whispered behind their hands, laughing at the spectacle of her defeat. She had become a living testament to the futility of envy and cruelty, while the girl, untouched and dignified, remained a symbol of resilience, blessing, and the miraculous power that had arisen from loss and ashes. The girl, once quiet and reserved, now moved through the village with a confidence that radiated from her very being. The miraculous dress, born from ashes and woven with the blessing of the ancestors, had not only restored what had been lost but had transformed her presence entirely. Every step she took seemed to carry a quiet authority, a natural grace that drew the eyes and hearts of the villagers. Children ran ahead to greet her, laughter spilling from their lips, while elders nodded with respect, sensing the touch of ancestral favor in her calm composure. The dress itself became more than a garment. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the triumph of virtue over cruelty. Its threads shimmered with an otherworldly glow, capturing the morning sun and reflecting it in delicate prisms of light that danced across walls, cobblestones, and riverbanks alike. Villagers spoke in hushed tones about the miraculous nature of the silk, recounting how it had risen from ashes untouched by fire, water, or knife. It reminded them daily that loss and hardship could give birth to strength and beauty beyond imagining, and that the hand of the ancestors always watched over those wronged unjustly. In this newfound strength, the girl no longer sought to hide or shrink from the admiration of others. She laughed freely, her voice carrying like a song across the square, and her eyes sparkled with a confidence born from trials overcome. Villagers who had once dismissed her, overlooked her, or even pitied her now found themselves drawn to her presence, inspired by her resilience. Her beauty was no longer simply a matter of physical form but a reflection of inner strength, courage, and the quiet wisdom earned through suffering. As the seasons passed, the girl's role in the village evolved. She was chosen to lead dances during harvest festivals, her movements graceful and fluid, a living embodiment of joy and triumph. During celebrations, the dress seemed to come alive, flowing with every step, its shimmering threads illuminating the square and uniting the villagers in wonder. Young and old alike followed her lead in dances, their hearts lifted by her radiant presence and the story of her miraculous journey from loss to blessing. Even the songs sung during these festivals began to carry her story, recounting how beauty, patience, and endurance could transform sorrow into triumph. The ancestral spirits, ever watchful, were said to linger around her, their presence felt in the gentle breeze that moved the hem of her dress, in the soft glint of the silk under the sun, and in the serene glow that seemed to emanate from her very being. Villagers spoke of the way she carried herself with both humility and authority, a living bridge between the mortal world and the unseen forces that had guided her. Her influence went beyond mere admiration. It inspired kindness, courage, and a renewed sense of justice within the village, reminding all who witnessed her of the power of resilience and the importance of protecting the innocent. The stepsister, once the focus of attention, now faded into obscurity. Her envy and malice, defeated by the miraculous silk and the girl's unwavering spirit, became a cautionary tale whispered among families. In contrast, the girl's radiance illuminated the village, her presence a living testament to endurance, virtue, and the unseen blessings that turn even the ashes of loss into threads of unimaginable beauty. Every festival, every dance, every gathering became an opportunity for her to inspire and unite, her glow a beacon of hope and a reminder that the ancestors' favor shines brightest upon those who endure with grace. The girl's journey, from the quiet corners of hardship to the radiant center of the village's admiration, became more than a tale to whisper on windy nights. It became a living proverb. Mothers told their children, elders recited it during gatherings, and travelers passing through repeated it to distant villages. What envy burns, the spirits weave anew. The words captured not just the miraculous rebirth of her cherished dress, but the enduring truth that cruelty and malice could never triumph over virtue protected by unseen forces. Each syllable carried the weight of her resilience, the proof that the threads of love, memory, and justice cannot be consumed, no matter how fierce the fire of jealousy. As the years passed, the girl's life continued to shine with the quiet brilliance of her inner strength. She no longer lingered in shadows, waiting for approval or fearing malice. Instead, she moved through the village as a living example of what happens when innocence, patience, and endurance meet the guidance of ancestral spirits. The miraculous dress remained a symbol, not of material wealth or vanity, but of something far deeper, the triumph of resilience and the protection offered to those who remain true in heart and spirit. Villagers often paused to admire its shimmer, but more than that, they felt the story woven into every thread, a story of survival, justice, and the sacred bond between the living and those who watch from beyond. Her stepsister, once filled with envy and pride, faded into memory, her malice powerless against the blessings that had been granted. Even the stepmother came to respect the invisible forces that had shaped the girl's destiny, learning that cruelty directed at the innocent returns not as harm to the virtuous, but as lessons hard-learned for the malicious. And so, the girl's life became a mirror for the village, reflecting the eternal lesson that spite cannot extinguish what is protected by virtue, and that acts of envy often sow their own defeat. The moral of her story extended beyond the village's borders, whispered from one generation to the next, to honor and protect the innocent, to value kindness over pride, and to remember that loss is not always an ending. From ashes can rise something greater, a creation that carries both beauty and justice, guided by forces beyond human comprehension. The miraculous silk dress, though once born from destruction, became a symbol of hope, a reminder that what is truly pure cannot be destroyed, only transformed. In the hearts of those who heard her tale, the girl's journey left an indelible mark, a truth to carry forward, a standard for living, and a promise that cruelty is never the final word. Through her, the village learned that patience, resilience, and faith in the unseen can turn devastation into wonder, suffering into triumph, and envy into lessons that shine for generations. And so, whenever shadows of jealousy or malice threaten, the proverb reminds all who listen, "What envy burns, the spirits weave anew." Her life, her triumph, and the miraculous silk dress became the eternal testament to the wisdom of the ancestors, the enduring power of virtue, and the unstoppable transformation that comes from patience, courage, and the quiet resilience of the heart.